Be here. Looking forward to having the opportunity to share, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wiggins. So I know there's quite a few, it's a Thursday, so we know student schedules. Some students are on a Tuesday, Thursday track, others are on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday track. So I know they will continue popping in, but we want to, in the interest of time, we would like to start with, the basics. So, and I will start with you, Lionel, since you were the last to introduce yourself. How did you decide on your career path, and what advice would you have for students who are trying to decide their own path?
Yeah, for me, I started as an engineering major, actually chemical engineering, and I started at USC, coming out of LA, Dorsey High School, and I was an athlete. So there was this sense in which, I was supposed to be focused on athletics. And I didn't have a full sense of what I could be or who I could be, but I always had this sort of gravitational pull towards the sciences. And I hit a wall and realized I wasn't prepared as much as I needed to be. And that was a revelation. So that was a jump to where I am now, working in the field of college student affairs. So, as I transitioned from that of the sciences to, the field of psychology, and now in higher education administration, I think the theme was utilizing my general education classes and asking myself, which ones sort of turned me on, which ones was like flipping the light and got my attention. And there were some philosophy classes that I took around the idea of the nature of self, life, existence. And it caused me to want to learn more about people. And so I shifted towards this direction of counseling, helping, and that's sort of how I made my way. So I encourage students today, if you see in my background, there's a little U and a P. And I always wanted to have a consulting company. And I decided to start an educational consulting company focused around this idea of unearthing people's potential. So that's what I called the company. And if you see the little guy in the middle, the idea is that I'm helping people hit their target. And I do that and encourage students to search for their natural talents, the things that, they have a proclivity toward that seem to awake them, and there's some sense of a passion, or they feel like they're in the zone. We can't always ultimately choose the exact career, but sometimes you can at least get in the perimeter, in that ballpark area, and it can give you the satisfaction that you were looking for, and oftentimes it gives you a launching board to get into that exact career that you wanted to be in. I didn't always want to be where I am now, but I found that the collection of strengths and talents that I became aware of allowed me to land where I am, and I'm happy and thankful that I'm here.
Thank you. That's a great introduction. It made me reflect on my journey as well. So I'll have Aisha respond to the same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I think I got it. I think Lionel set us up perfectly for kind of reflecting on our career journey and the advice that we can give folks. For me, I had a similar path. I was an athlete in school, wasn't a great one, but enough to, kind of have those things under my belt. I'm from Chicago originally, so my whole family expected me to go to college. I was a huge dork, nerd. Like they were like, oh, she's going to do excellent. And so there was no idea that my path could be any different from going to the big state school and just killing it. Of course, that is not what happened. As Lynell said, you go there, especially at the big state schools, there's just so many people, there's a lot, it's very overwhelming, which I think is one of the great things about going to a community college is that you kind of get a sense of what school is like once you leave high school. And I really wish I had developed that better. So again, that reflecting on your personal strengths and weaknesses, and maybe not weaknesses, but just things you're not particularly good at, like getting up early, if that's not your thing. So all these things I had not really known. And so I was thrust into this area where you kind of have to figure a lot out. So I think one thing that with my path, I also started in STEM, and it was in chemistry, specialized chemistry, loved doing it, but it really wasn't something that I personally found rewarding, that I enjoyed. It was just kind of something that I was supposed to do well. And I think that was the thing that really changed for me once I got to college. I realized like just being there is not enough. You really have to have some more connection to what you're doing. And so I started exploring. I kind of took my path in my own hands. I talked to counselors in other places, including in the humanities, to kind of see what my journey could look like based on what I like to do, which is to be a know-it-all. I like knowing information. I like finding things out that people maybe have or know, but have not shared openly with the public or with the general folks who need that information. And I said, well, what is that? That's information science, where we take information in these very specific areas and we make it meaningful and accessible to everyone. So once I kind of realized how that could be, I said, okay, well, what next? So I talked to lots of people. So that can be your peers. If you have someone who seems like they have set it up to where they kind of know where they're going and they have information in a field that you're interested in, you can definitely start with them, but you also need to talk to some professionals. So that means your counselors, that means people who are doing the work, your faculty members, other instructors that you come across. Again, all these people are just folks. They're just like us. They started in some like wacky way and they figured it out along the way, and they want to share that with you. They like talking about what they do and where they came from. So I spent a lot of time just coming into libraries, going into archives, going into museums, and talking to people about what they do. Even if I had basic questions like, I saw your title is this, what does that mean? You don't have to know a whole bunch. You just need some starting questions. And I think that courage, like to really get into stranger talk. And I know a lot of y'all can probably say the soft skills. So being able to talk to people and communicate very clearly, that will always help you in any field you go into. So I think that's the beginning of kind of that journey for me, was kind of like getting that experience. And then I just tried to really get practical experience. So internships, volunteering, practicums, anything I could do. Libraries, unfortunately, are probably one of the most, I would say, inequitably paid professions that I know of. And so you do a lot of stuff for free. You get used to it. It's very problematic, but it's just kind of way things are right now. But I tried to take as much advantage of that. I volunteered. I did things from like, I collected bugs in like an archive for a summer just to get to know the materials and the temperatures and humidity, all these things that you have to think about when you keep things that are important to our culture and our history, right? I did baby story time with puppets, like anything, just go where you want to go to see like, what is the thing that excites me? What makes me want to show up here and really engage with the community? And so and because there's so many ways to be a librarian, I kind of really didn't know what my way was. So through those practical experiences, I learned that I want to teach. I like talking to people. I like sharing knowledge. And then I also like the technical aspect. So that's how I got into distance education, is like combining all of these things together, being able to converse and teach with people using technology. So I think at the end of it all, it's like making sure you understand what informs what you do the best, learn as much as possible, and then how that knowledge can be shared through peers, through a network of professionals. And y'all are lucky that y'all are at LACC. So you already have a directory of folks you can choose from and just go down the list, and just like hang out with people in their office, talk to them, show up for office hours, and ask those questions. Because at the end of the day, again, we're all here to help you achieve your personal and professional goals. And as a part of that reflective practice will get you to whatever field or occupation you want to do. Don't worry so much about having an idea exactly of what you need to do. As Lynell said, you'll take some classes that'll have you reflect upon yourself. And to me, that was the biggest step that I missed coming from high school to college. I really should have spent more time thinking about who I was and what I identified with and how that could be seen in the work that I wanted to do. Because you can always change careers, but you kind of need to know who you are to do those things well. And I think that's the main point that I'd like to kind of share with y'all.
I wish I had spoken to Aisha when I graduated high school, because that would have saved me 3 years of finding myself.
I wish I had also spoken to me when I graduated high school, but here we are.
Yeah. Dr. Day, I'll let you answer the same question.
Great, thank you. For me, I believe my career path was charted when I was in my mother's womb. My grandparents and my parents were entrepreneurs. So I grew up with business folks all the time. We talked finances in my home. My father owned his own business. Grandmother owned her own business. Mother was an entrepreneur. So the seed was planted into me, into my soul and spirit very early on. Didn't mean that I was thinking about something else. So business always was at the top of my mind. The business acumen was built because of my parents and others that I knew in the community, the business owners in the community. So it wasn't difficult for me to select a career path because I knew that it would be something in business, but I didn't want to limit it to just business, because as a little girl, I was a teacher. I played teacher with no students. I made up names for students, played imaginary students, always knew I wanted to be a teacher. So when I started thinking about my career path right after high school, and by the way, I did take business courses in high school, had a very good group of business instructors who inspired me, of course, who encouraged me, who advised me to go into the field of business. But I didn't want to just go into business because my grandparents and my parents. I wanted to do it because I needed to find my niche in business. I didn't want to be a business owner, and I knew that. So I needed to find the discipline in business that was satisfying to me. I mean, dad had his own business, mom had her own business. I did the finances, I knew accounting, I was the accountant, had an opportunity to do that. So I tested and tried the waters. When I was in college, one of my first jobs was in financial aid, where I had to do the accounting for financial aid. Didn't like it. Left there and decided that I wanted to go and do teaching. So I had an opportunity to have a graduate assistant's job at a high school, where again, I was teaching business courses. Found out that I really liked the teaching, didn't like the 8 to 5 being in the office so much, but really liked the connection with the students. Now it's time for me to decide, what are you going to do? What career path are you going to take? Are you going to be a business owner like your dad and your mom and your grandparents? Or really, are you going to satisfy the desire in your heart, and that is to teach students? So guess what? I had to really investigate what this really looks like. I mean, entrepreneur, teacher. So I decided on, after talking to my career counselor, which I had some very good ones, and yes, students, you always want to connect to those who really know how to advise you to make the selection that's going to be the best fit for you in choosing that career path. For me, I didn't have a lot of time, so I didn't want to waste a lot of time. I did not want to be one of those students who attended law school and a year later decided, hated it, didn't want to do it. So I knew that the choice that I made at the time had to be something that I could live with for a very long time, because I didn't want to waste the time. So I had those courageous conversations with career counselors. And I said, look, I want to be a business owner, I think, but I also have the option and the desire to be a teacher. What would you recommend that I do? And the counselor said very clearly, talk to those in business, talk to those in management, and see how it actually feels. Talk to them about the reasons why they make that decision, and think about it, and maybe you'll want to do that. But at the same time, I know I had that tug and that pull, and I wanted to be a teacher too. So I said, well, look, I don't know what I want to do. I said to the career counselor early on when I was a freshman in college, I don't really know what major to declare. Can you really help me? But I do want to make sure it's something that I can live with. And I do know that I have at least identified 2 areas, business or teaching. So what I decided to do is to major in business administration and business education, a double major, which allows me to do both teaching and working in the actual office. So my first job was a payroll accountant. I used to work at USC, worked at the University of Southern California as a payroll accountant, and then went directly into teaching. Both the bachelor's and master's degree allowed me to do that. And then, of course, when I returned back to school, wanted to continue that education, I still wanted to continue in the field of business. So that's where the organizational leadership. So if I can make a recommendation to students today, just make sure that you follow your dream. Make sure it's something that you really want to. You can change your mind along the way, but satisfy the desire within your heart so that you know that you'll be successful and you will enjoy whatever you do, whether it's in the field of business or any other field. So that's how I arrived at the field of business, entrepreneurship, loving management.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dr. Day. Jessica, do you want to get the next question for us?
Sure, and I will address it to Dr. J since she was so patient with us in taking the last question. I would want to know, how did race factor in as it relates to your educational and or career choices and success?
Wow, I wanted you to ask this question, and I really wanted to answer this question. I thought a lot about it, and when I think about race and how it has impacted me, Thelma Day, the triple threat, the Black educated woman. And I think about not being privileged or entitled, and all the years of my life, how I've had to convince people that I am good enough for positions. I will share a very true but very painful story with you. When I arrived in Los Angeles about 4 decades ago, I had the opportunity to be employed at one of the local, I won't even, places in Los Angeles. Very early on in my career, the women and men who didn't look like me in my place of employment decided that they wanted to challenge me and did not believe that I had the educational experience that I had. So phone calls were made to the institution to verify whether or not the degrees that I earned at accredited institutions were in fact valid. Very true in today's. So race has impacted me because I'm not privileged. And every single day of my life, I am in a conversation, either verbally or trying to demonstrate that I really deserve to be in this place. When I think about race, I also think about growing up in the South. Native Mississippian, early on, decided that I wanted to be an educated woman, had the power, was empowered by my parents to do so. But it was not an easy challenge. And every single day, when I think about what I do, I often think about the times that I've been challenged because of who I am and how much I had to prove to be who I am. So race has impacted me all throughout my career. But the thing that I can say, because of who I am and the perseverance that I had to demonstrate, I am able to push through those things. When I think about how race has impacted my career, you have to know that because of growing up in the South, moving to Los Angeles, moving up in the career, each and every time that there is a decision to move to a next level, I get a flashback. Desegregation, integration. Desegregation, integration. So it has truly impacted my life because I have always had to prove who I am, but it has not stopped me from moving up and doing those things. I am very fortunate to say that being employed at the Los Angeles Community College District has given me those times to pause, but at the same time, the strength that I get from my parents and others who have motivated and mentored me to move forward has given me the ability to move forward. And it gave me an opportunity to become a humanitarian service, to give back to the world, and also to stay committed and passionate about serving students, even in the challenges that I've had in my career.
Thank you so much, Dr. Day. Ms. Aisha, would you like me to repeat the question, or you okay?
Yeah, I think I got it. Yeah,
Okay.
race. Dr. Day touched on so many things, and I just want to thank you because I feel like I'm absolutely a product of probably so many of the experiences. And I'm sorry that you had to undergo them, first off. But I think just what you've done and your resilience is a reason why I am also probably a librarian right now. Because I mean, so information science is a very white field. We know education is, but specifically library and information science, as a 2010, 85% of the folks who have my title or a similar title, librarian in some way, are white. Another 82% are female. So we have overarchingly inequitable by race in our field. And I mean, when you go to the conferences, when you engage with people in these panels, when you're doing things in the industry, you are usually the only Black person there. I became very much used to only being the Black woman librarian in the room, Black person in the room, Black person on the committee. So in addition to just teaching in the classroom where you feel like you're empowered and you're ready and you want to talk to students, there are these other spaces that you are in as a person in either the humanities or in education or these other fields where you are literally the only Black person there. And coming from Chicago, which is hugely segregated, coming through a predominantly white institution, which is hugely segregated, being in chemistry where I was always the only Black girl in every class, it became almost a sad expectation that I would always be the Black person. And I think funny enough, and by funny, I mean extremely sad and disappointing, is that following the integration that Dr. Day experienced, I feel like I came from the like neoliberal other side of this, or as a kind of youngish, and that's a real loose word, person, I actually get the almost other side of that, where it's not so much people questioning my presence, but they're using my presence as a justification to say that we have come a long way, right? We are colorblind. We have a Black librarian here. Like we are killing it in terms of race and, misogyny. Like we don't have any misogynoir. We have a Black woman here and she's a librarian and she's faculty, right? So they use this data to say that we're doing real great and things have changed so dramatically since Dr. Day had to, call up people and tell them that she has a degree that she rightfully earned. So it's like both sides of that, I definitely feel. And it is something that is depressing. I mean, it's hard to go into these spaces all the time and be the only Black person there, to have to explain the basics of why students have challenges and barriers, specifically because of their race. In a place like Los Angeles, where we see it time and time again, the differences in culture and family and society. And we have to constantly be the person who explains basics to people who read all the time, but they don't read the right things to understand the differences that people are facing. So, I mean, I'm honored to be there in those rooms to say and stand up and say, hey, that's racist. And I like empower a lot of students to do that. I mean, don't call out all your teachers in the middle of a lesson or whatever, but I'll say one thing I learned that I wish I had felt more empowered. And this took me until I was 25, 26, leaving graduate school to learn. It's like, if it feels racist, it probably is. And I think that's something that we are often like aware of, but we have so much on the line, but we acknowledge and we know that. And I want to empower you to like, maybe you can't call it out in that moment, but definitely to at least encourage you to be aware and share that. One thing that Dr. Day touched on too, that I think is a real important part about being a Black person in any space, but specifically in the humanities, is to create a community early and often. The only reason that I graduated from my graduate school is because as soon as I saw anyone or heard anyone who understood, who shared, who talked to me, I joined. We had a students of color group there because there wasn't even enough Black people to have a Umoja. I joined immediately. And yeah, maybe some of them weren't down in the way I thought I was down, but I met some incredible people who to this day are my closest friends. And when you get to your industry and you start really collaborating and doing presentations and all these things, they're going to also be the people that you work the most with. And you're going to create some incredible projects, grants, just products of both of your labor. One, y'all get paid together, you get to celebrate it together, and then know that those people are also a part of your journey, and they are absolutely 100% down for your success. And that's the main thing that I really cannot emphasize enough, is start creating your community today. Because I don't know if you have grandparents or parents who have had friends for years and years, and you're like, how did you meet that person? Y'all was online, or like you knew somebody from college, or that's 100% the case. Like, you meet these people when you're 20, 22, 25, 30, and they will always be there along your life at different stages, especially in these rooms where you are the only Black person. You need someone to text to say, did you hear what Dr. So-and-so said? That was crazy. Okay. And like, yes, it's sad, but you can at least have that moment to kind of bring some joy into what would be an awful situation otherwise. So please, please, please be a part of Umoja if you can, or you're already thinking about it. Just go meet people, engage with them, and start creating your community now, because really that's what's going to keep you in it when race and white supremacy and whiteness and all these other things continue to try to beat you down in a system that's much bigger than ourselves. But we have each other to kind of build up. And that's very, very important.
Definitely. And I do appreciate the fact that both of you guys touched on, as being a Black woman in these industries, you're either the token Black person or you're the angry Black person in the room if you speak out against anything. So thank you very much for touching on those subjects. Mr. Wiggins, I'll leave the floor to you. Would you like me to repeat the question? Are you okay, sir?
No, I'm not okay.
You're not okay. Okay, surely. I have no problem repeating the question.
My colleagues have me warmed up.
Bring the heat. Bring the heat.
I appreciate.
So I'll switch it up for you a little bit then. Okay. Do you think that Black men are experiencing more or less than what Black women are experiencing as far as obstacles with race in their careers and their successful journeys to those?
Oh, I appreciate that question. It's so complicated as you approach your career from the perspective that you think you will have equal opportunity based on your skill set and your talent. And you find that there are historical underlying factors that not only impede your entry, but will affect you in the role once you get in it. And you realize just getting in the position doesn't mean you're actually accepted in the position once you're there. There's a continual sort of audition that sometimes you may feel like you're going through. And, for me, it was a matter of understanding that I had to feel comfortable within the skin that I was in. And that's why I wish there was a program like the Umoja community when I was at City. And I was encouraged by an African-American history instructor, Mr. Henry Ely at LA City College. And I've written a paper about the Harlem Renaissance. And he said, have you ever thought about being a teacher? I never crossed my mind. But we get in these environments with people who can acknowledge our beauty and success and call out those things in us that maybe we don't always see. And I think that's part of the solution, is wherever you find yourself on your professional journey, remember that you should be seeking to continue to either create those types of environments for someone else, or look for people who can speak into your life in that way. And that helps. If I were to be fully honest, I was struggling. Please do, right? I'm emotional right now. There are certain things that happen to you in your educational and professional life. I'm 48 years old, you guys. I remember my time at City like it was yesterday. time sort of folds over and it's really quick. You think you have tons of years to take advantage of different things. Be present and engaged right now. I had an experience when I was at USC. Me and my two friends, we're engineering majors. We're going to our first party on the historic USC row. It's a row of white frat and sorority houses. Everybody goes over, big football game, we won. I'm going to my first college party. And as we walked down the street and we stepped up on the curb, out of nowhere, about 8 cars descended on us, campus police. And I'm like, what is going on? Guys, get out. What are you guys doing over here? Well, what do you think we're doing here? We're going to the party. A party? There's tons of people on the street. Why did you stop us? And the guy says, well, you don't fit the mold. I'm like, damn, what is that supposed to mean? I don't fit the mold of being a college student, being an engineering major, Black? Well, okay, I'm kind of short. I guess they figure I'm not a USC athlete, so they're not gonna roll up on me. Maybe it's because how I'm dressed. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the institutional issues that exist around race, culture, whatever the dynamics are on the wheel of diversity, you may be hit at some point with one of those dynamics. And you have to ask yourself, what is it within me that is going to help me to be resilient and fight through this obstacle to get to my goal? Because things come up to just thwart you no matter who you are. But for us, it's almost like sometimes it feels targeted and that it's planned, right? Like, wow. I question and ask myself, was I ever able to get over that? And you can probably tell, not really, because it's still coming up, right? But that's how life is. There's certain things that happen to you, and you have to learn to excel and succeed despite the obstacle, because that obstacle is ever present. So I don't go looking for issues around race. I presume that they're there, but my goal is to be fully present in every environment I'm in, stay engaged. That's how I seek to be a hero. I define a hero from an acronym: highly engaged and ready for the objective. So when I show up to class, I've done a little bit of my pre-reading. I at least should be able to engage in the conversation going on in class, right? Ready to answer a few questions. It's just a state of being present and understanding that somebody always expects for you to have a perspective. It may not be fair, it may not be right, but I'm at a point now in my life where I'm comfortable with recognizing, okay, I'm gonna make sure I got something for them. I don't always give it, but I'm gonna have a perspective that's mindful of those who've invested in me, that comes from a perspective of those who have invested and spoken to my life, and that I'm still carrying the mantle.
Thank you, Lynell.
Can I add one quick thing
Please,
about what
go
Lynell?
ahead.
Okay, so Lynell touched on something that actually I think a lot of students, you're going to experience this in class. And whether or not the instructor is prepared to help you, I'm not sure, but it's gonna be the Black reading of the day and everyone's gonna turn and look at you. So like Lynell said, you have two things to do. One, you can prepare accordingly and you can share. Two, you can prepare and maybe not share. I'll add a third option, which I think, again, as an information scientist helps me a lot, is always turning that question onto the class And I think as an educator, your instructor wants you to engage with the rest of the class anyway. So this will earn you like super duper participation points. And say, you know, like, what do you think, how does the reading impact you as someone who's like non-Black, right? Or these other things. Because again, sometimes we read these things and they're very helpful because they help all of us kind of engage with what it means to be Black in society. But very often it overlooks how everyone else is supposed to be changing and understanding the readings as a part of learning as a white person or Armenian person or whatever ethnicity they're coming with. And so, yes, when the heads turn to you during the Black History Month readings or whatever else is happening in class, I like empower you and encourage you to like honestly develop those into discussion questions for everyone to share from their perspective. And then you can say, okay, I understand what you're saying. I encourage you to think about it this way. And then you can add your piece into that, which is, again, supporting them, helping them understand more, but also not relying on you to be the Black voice in the room. Because again, we are not a monolith. And we say that every Black History Month. And it bears repeating. And you're going to feel that weight pretty much, unfortunately, as Lynell said, in pretty much every space you enter into some higher ed, it's going to be the Black reading time. And you're going to feel awkward and maybe even upset. And that's okay to sit in those feelings, but recognize that the classroom is a space for not only engagement, but empowerment. And so I empower you to think about how you can use the readings and the conversations and even if you're asynchronous discussion posts, how can you use those things to really discuss real issues with your classmates? Because those are going to become your colleagues, peers, your neighbors in the future. And so you're going to have those conversations now. So I empower you to think about that beyond just shutting down and looking at your phone.
That's powerful.
Amen. So you both touched on things that I think inspired me to interject here because we are the humanities, there's the additional responsibility for us to break down those systemic barriers. So had we been having this conversation in STEM or anywhere else, we may skirt the responsibility, but we are the educators. We are the administrators. We are the ones, the historians. We are the librarians. And so if we don't tell the story from our narrative, it will never come out. It will never exist. The filmmakers won't be able to make the film because we didn't tell the story or write the story. So unfortunately, or fortunately, we have that added responsibility. So like Lionel said, like Dr. Day said, look, I graduated high school. I tested so high on the SATs. They were like, move from West Africa and come here to school. All right, cool, I'll do that. I got my bachelor's degree, my doctorate, I did all of that. I was one of the youngest deans in the district. I did all of that. And then the first day I opened the door in my dean's office, it was like, are you sure you're in the right place? Are you the person? And it wasn't just everybody else that had questions. I had questions. Like, can I do this job? Because everybody else doesn't believe that I need to do it. So it's true, we have that responsibility. But the one thing that keeps me going, and I'm sure for the rest of the panelists, is that I wanted to be able to sit across from other students that look like me, that sound like me, that has the experience like me, and understand them. And them not having to explain why they were in front of me, because I was them. And so that's the additional thing. I totally agree with Aisha. We don't want to be that token person that has to answer every time that it's Black History Month. And so if you can turn the tables on them, please do. And if not, look, I actually said it I happened to go to Glenville Community College a long time ago. I happened to tell the sociology instructor, I don't have an answer for you. Simple as that.
Yeah.
I present as Black, you see me as Black, but I don't have an answer for you. You can ask anybody else in class, but it is not my responsibility to be the person that tells you my experience here. So it's tough. We're all going through it at different stages of our lives, but I personally think it's getting better. I personally think I am glad to see people that look like me, that sound like me, and allies that that are willing to have the conversations, that are willing to move the work forward. Because I didn't see that much when I was going to school. And I think in these spaces, it's getting better. And I hope for you students that are in the audience that you feel that. And if you don't, please let us know, because hold us accountable. We need to continue doing more. So I'll let you guys react to that before I go to the next question. I can see Dr. Day waiting.
I want to just jump in
Go
for
ahead.
just a few minutes, and I don't want to get us off, but I think what you just said, Dr. Juf, is very important. When you have that reality check, racial battle fatigue is real. When you have that reality check, and it's going to happen often throughout in school, throughout the career, you need something in you. You had something in you that keeps you going, because there will be times in their classes you will second guess yourself and think that you're not smart enough to be in the class. There will be times in your career when you will do what Dr. Juf just did, and you'll say, when you open the door, is this the place for me? You knew that you knew more than anyone probably there, but you still ask yourself the question, is this really where I'm supposed to be? So students, when you find yourselves in that position, you've got to pull up from the gut, that power to keep you going. And you've got to surround yourself around a permanent village who will always be there to inspire you and give you the resources that you need to be successful. That's critical. Don't forget it.
Amen. As I'm trying to click the unmute button. And we are only on question 3, folks. Can you tell this is going to be an exciting panel? I'm glad we're recording this because I really would love to share this with all the folks that were not able to make it at this time. And question 3, I think we really have actually gotten into, which was what barriers or challenges in your career did you experience and how did you overcome them? And for each one of the panelists, I would like you to maybe think of, because I know for me, the answer is easy, it's community. I built community, and it doesn't matter what experience, or positive or negative, I rely on them to be able to figure out the best ways to do it. And so as you think of students, how best can they approach, the issues that you have had to overcome, and what was the best way for you to get through them? I will start the round robin with you, Lionel, since you were the last one to go on the other side.
I'm going to build off the concept of race, but connecting it with, I feel like sometimes we may get confused and not understand that issues that we sometimes think are all about race are actually also about power. And the barrier that I struggled with, or the challenge in my career, is not understanding that in that hierarchy of me being an employee, there are individuals that have come before me and may not have come to terms with the social structure of, how can I put this? Basically, they want to assert their power over you. And you as a worker, and when I say power, if I were to define power, I would say in a very simplistic way, power is your ability to get someone else to see your reality as their own. Okay? So as we're engaging with instructors or supervisors, sometimes that power dynamic can be abused for whatever reason, the things that those individuals have gone through, et cetera, et cetera. And the way that they administer that power can impact your mental health, your physical health, and even what you believe to be true about the world and the work that you're doing. So to some extent, you have to build your own concept of what you understand to be true and hold on to that, lock it away, build it and develop it as you're going through your experiences in your career and your profession, because that's your own way in which you're going to manifest yourself in the world. and maybe it's going to contribute to a business that you start, or help you to see your nuanced perspective that you're going to offer to the company in a new light, but maybe they're not ready for it yet. You know what I mean? So I think the way that I've struggled with my own development is trying to communicate the way in which I see progression in education and the development of a career for students coming up through the community college system, and trying to prepare for success in a different way than what we traditionally promote. That's sort of been my personal challenge, and trying to get my colleagues to see success through a little bit of a different progression for students.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Day, how about you?
I go back to the village concept. It's very, 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 very important to establish the permanent village. As a student in school, you want to make sure you have individuals around you, as I said earlier, who will inspire you and be able to provide the resources that you really need. Early on in college, for me, it was important for me to have those folks around me. Make sure that you're connected to organizations that really are going to help you really move forward. We often talk about sororities and fraternities, but if I have to speak on it, share with you that it's probably the most powerful, resourceful, beneficial thing that you can do. Oftentimes it's looked at in a negative light, because we think of a sorority as partying and fraternities. But if you look at the great folks who are part of this and know how they have used that to build power and to elevate their careers. We heard Kamala Harris, when she was nominated for the Vice President of these United States, she called out the campus of Howard University, and she called out her sorority sisters, because she built that village. So don't turn your head on building a village, particularly when it relates to organizations that can really move you forward. It's important to do that in school and keep a connection with that village as you move forth in your career, because these are going to be people that you'll be able to call on. When you build that power base within those organizations, you will be able to reach back, pick up the phone, call them when you need them, and they will be there to, again, I keep saying, providing the resources and the empowerment that you need. The other thing is know thyself. You got to know you. You've got to find a way to keep you motivated, encouraged as you move along the journey. For me, it's that spiritual base. It's meditating, understanding who I am, reading, making sure that I'm connecting with the right folks at the right time. Between that village and knowing thyself, then you will be able to move forward. Those barriers, those challenges that you face will be much easier if you have those individuals around you. And I'm going to be short on that because I know we're running out of time and we have some other questions. There's a lot more that I can say about the village.
Thank you, Dr. Day. Aisha, I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, I'll be succinct as well. I mean, y'all touched on so much of what I feel. I mean, for me, it's always been kind of this journey to perfection, where I think there's some perfect place that I need to be, either because that's where my parents wanted me to go, or my friends got these things and they look good. So just recognizing that there's no perfect place to be, that again, you're trying to work on something that gives you some sense of fulfillment, a little bit of purpose, but it should not be your whole life. I think as a non-tenured faculty member, so someone who's actually in the tenure process, so that I can be big time after this point, I have to always remember too that one of the challenges of work is that it is just work. You should also have, as Dr. Day says, a development of self, something outside of your place of work that's going to give you fulfillment and joy, that's not connected to your degrees or your skill set or a particular group of people that you can call yourself a colleague to. I think that's why white supremacy is so prevalent, is because they've really latched on to that idea and can't let it go. Like, we are people outside of these places, and that's very important to who we are as not only Black people, but as people in general. One thing that has helped me with a lot of, I think, barriers, maybe not racial or gendered ones, but definitely some more of these kind of work weirdness, as Lynell said, where people living in other realities and y'all in a different meeting, but somehow you're in the same meeting and these weird things happen, is I've really gotten into this habit of asking forgiveness than permission. And it sounds messed up, but hear me out, is that it really does become this idea of there are resources at your disposal. And if you don't ask for them, sometimes demand access to them as a part of a community, people will not share them. They will not allow you into the space to get them. And then by proxy, you're not receiving or being able to use those resources to better yourself and others. So for me, a lot of colleagues are always like, how'd you find out about the fact that we have incentives for this grant? Or how did you get money for this survey? Or how did you get this thing for these students? And I say, because I told them I needed it. So I went and found out who it was. Again, this is a part of the information science where you do your research, you find out who is the person that's in charge of the things. And you say, hey, I'm so-and-so, give me access to these things. And it's up to them to tell me why I cannot have it. And that has honestly helped me so much. I have stopped asking people for certain things, and I am kind and I am courteous with my request, but I recognize very quickly that there are many things that people will not give you, again, based on who they think you are, what you look like, your race, your gender, your sexuality, or what they perceive your sexuality to be. And so a lot of times, especially in the humanities, higher ed, and these other kind of where professionalism is such a big deal, I guess. You have to be ready to just ask. And then if you need to politely apologize, or not even that, just say like, oh, I misunderstood, or thank you for clarifying, because I stopped apologizing in email as well. Ask forgiveness and then better than permission, because a lot of times people have access to things and they personally decide how they're going to assist people. And it's not right, but that's kind of how a lot of these systems operate because of historical and racial issues. So I don't know if that might have not been way more than some kindly advice, but that's honestly what I've been doing for a long time, and it has served me quite well.
It works for you. I unfortunately need to jump off this panel because unfortunately, again, I was triple booked, but I'm leaving you in the trusted hands of Jessica. Yeah, no, it's all you, Jessica. Both you and I'm sure one of the rest of the employees will be able to handle this panel. I really, before I jumped off, wanted to say thank you. Lionel, you reminded me that you knew me when I was 22 and starting my career here, and I look forward to seeing the rest of you. And the reason why I bring that up is someone like Lionel, we have been in the same circles and we've been doing our work, and we continue to support each other in the different spaces that we're doing this. And so I hope for you, whether it is DeQuinn, Angelica, Moises, Reina, whichever one build that community, because 20 years later, Lionel and I are seeing each other again and again and again. And even though it may be the first time that I'm meeting Aisha, I'm pretty sure this is not going to be the last. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope you continue having a great rest of your panel. Jessica, take it off.
I sure will. I'll say that as a student, my biggest obstacle is going into these spaces and then them wanting to kind of have an excuse to, I don't want to use a term that's derogatory, but to ghetto up the thing. They feel like as soon as I enter into the space, it's okay to kind of be lackadaisical on their rules, restrictions. It's okay to kind of let down their guard, use verbiage and language they normally wouldn't use if I hadn't been there. And then so a lot of times it's like a eye opener to see that, wow, I wonder if I had used the same tone of words, if I would have been taken as a joke or as an angry Black woman and had a meeting in HR about how I feel and how it's coming off as being aggressive with everyone else, and if I could tone it down. So I appreciate you guys, giving that perspective of the higher professionalism that is being accepted and being expected of us, but then at the same time, those same powers feel like they can dumb down what they're doing or dumb down our process because it's a Black person who may not be aware of all the red tape and make me aware. You know, if you give me information and give me knowledge, you are setting me up to be able to make the same decisions, just like you were able to make those decisions. And I was told that if someone withholds information from you, that is the first act of warfare. So to me, information warfare is the one that I'm fighting right now. So Aisha, I hear you on the IT front, definitely. I believe the next question is, what do you wish you had done during your time in college that you did not do that could have helped you in your life and or career? And Miss Aisha, I'll start with you since you're our middle panelist today.
And I'm so sorry, I'm gonna have to interrupt too. I just got to jump off of this. I really wanted to be in the end. Hopefully I'll be invited back, but I know it's gonna be great. Thank you for inviting me. Students, best of luck to you. And I look forward to coming back on another panel at a later time. Have a great one. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Day.
Thank you.
All right, now it's just us. Let's get real.
All right, exactly. Yeah, no, I think for me, we touched so much upon our journeys and what we've learned along the way, dealing with race and gender and whiteness and all these different things. I think for me, specifically in college, I was a silo. I basically suffered in silence for years, and was in deep depression for the first 2 years of college, and just really had no community or really anyone to talk to about it. So I think one of the things that we touched on, and I'll say it again and again always, is building your community of peers. So people your age, even if they're from back home or wherever, that you trust and you can talk to when things are really hitting you a certain way and you see that you're struggling. But also developing a campus community. So mentors or trusted advisors or instructors or people that you know you can talk to, and not necessarily even about school stuff, but just about things that are affecting the way that you move on campus. Because a lot of the times too, as administrators, you know, we only hear things from y'all. We have a lot of insular conversations, and this is why they always survey y'all. You're like, man, they do a lot of surveys on campus. There's a reason for that. It's because it's very hard for us to get feedback in these certain areas where people are struggling without hearing directly from the students. So always give that feedback, even if you don't think someone's going to be particularly receptive to what you're saying. Make sure that you give it to someone, if not directly to your instructor, because they have the power to change your grade, which I understand. Make sure you give it to the dean, give it to a counselor, give it to someone so they're aware and that it can be noted. Because I think that's the biggest part about this. Make sure that it's noted down someplace. This is the reason why I also follow up a lot via email when I have meetings with people, because I want the official note that I can pull out of somewhere and say, I've given you feedback. I've given you a history of issues. I've given you also hopefully positive feedback as well. And so you can build on that. And that's all we have from y'all is feedback. So in college, I wish I had given more feedback to the community I was a part of in terms of the college itself, but also just doing myself the disservice of not creating community and really getting out there. Dr. Day, before she left, touched on the importance of organizations. And I wish I had been more involved. If you're an Emoja, like great, you're already doing some of that, but get involved, even if it's weird stuff, like people who like to, I don't know, like do puzzles, like just join whatever and really be a part of it. Because at the end of the day, it really helps you with those soft skills of getting to know people and communicating, but it also just gives you a place for joy that's not connected to your grades. And I think that's the importance of college too, is like a lot of it is the grade stuff, but a lot of it is becoming a person. College taught me how to become a person. And so I feel like if you can enter spaces that help you do that, then you're doing college right, regardless of how awesomely, you know, you're doing on your grades. You really want to get these other skills as well. And I think those are the other spaces where that really happens. The classroom is limiting. It's, you know, time sensitive. There's a power differential between you and your instructor. In those organizations and those other non-class spaces, you get a little more equity as a student. You get to talk to peers. You get to talk to people who are experiencing what you're experiencing. And those are very, very important. Even if just one club, one organization, maybe if you start your own, whatever, just engage a little bit more. I think that's, and don't just go home, because I know that's like very, like, it feels so good to just leave, but sometimes you got to stay a little later to get to know the people that are going to become your peers and colleagues.
Definitely. Our panelist yesterday, Ms. Thea Alexander, talked about creating networks and being able to go inside of the careers that you want to go to initially, with the idea that you are building, like you said, this community of support and, or, just outreach that you can have in order to get some insight, some perspective, maybe a leg up on some information in the career path you want to take. Mr. Wiggins, I'll address you as well. Was there anything in college that you felt like, man, if I could have just did this, it would have helped my life or my career so much better?
I love Aisha's response. There's this thing called the hidden job market. And what it is basically the reality that most jobs that exist are in companies with people who know about the open vacancy before they post the position on the internet or put the hard copy job out there. So the people that you would be potentially working with are the ones who could potentially recommend you. So the more people you are networking with, or that have a sense of who you are as a person that wouldn't mind offering a recommendation for you, you have opportunity to find your way into those positions. Very much the same concept exists like on a community college campus. Your instructors, to the extent that you feel comfortable asking them a question. If you don't feel comfortable, write out a question at home before you get to the class that would allow you to start engaging them and helping them understand who you are. You might need a recommendation letter for college, for scholarships, for grants. And that sort of, essence of being willing to do that is such a value carrying through your educational to professional life. Because if you think about it, you go through this cycle of applying for positions and opportunities, and you always need people who have a fuller sense of who you are and what you're capable of, and that wouldn't mind sharing it. So for me, I think that is critical. And sometimes I don't think we recognize how important it is because we're so caught up dealing with life. And it's like, well, when I get to that point, I'll find somebody that could speak up for me, but have you been cultivating it to where you can just tap into it? So that's something that I would recommend.
So plant seeds in people's lives of the areas you want to go into, or at least just develop relationships is what you're saying.
Well, and even take it a step further, I would say from a professional sense, engage in informational interviews. So that means if there's a career field you'd like to get into, actually write out a list of questions. You can do a little bit of research on the internet to find out more about it. And do you know you can just cold call people or find their information on LinkedIn or on the internet? And while you're a student, people are more willing to talk to you. Like once you graduate, get your degree, then it's like, what does this person want? They want a job, don't they? It's like their attitude changes a little bit.
It's like you become a threat immediately.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, you might want my job one day, right? So, I mean, in people's minds, you never know what they're thinking. But the reality is, the one thing that I found true, when a person is coming from an educational stance, like, I just really like to learn more. I was wondering if you think I might be able to bring you a cup of coffee to the job, or, if I could sit down with you. I know we're in a virtual space now, but do you mind jumping on a Zoom call with me for about 15 or 20 minutes? I just wanted to ask you a few questions. You'd be very surprised how many doors that you can get into from taking that posture.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I'll add, I'll add real quick.
Go ahead. It's an open conversation.
Speaking the truth here, y'all, like the cold call is such a weird thing to do. I get it, but this is just like the sliding into the DMs on social. You're already following this person to some degree. It's for better purposes. And in the future, this is going to help you way more. It's time well spent. And I think don't ever appreciate how much people want to share about themselves. I think this is the thing, because you're like, who would want to talk to me? I don't, my weird 5 questions, people love talking about themselves and they love talking about their work. This is like an American culture thing, right? We are what we do, right? That's the first thing people ask. What do you do? So if we're going to have that problematic culture, use it to your advantage. Like, don't be afraid to come out of nowhere and be like, I'm interested in movies. Like, do you know someone? And if you're maybe that's too much for you and maybe you're a little more insular or introverted, go through your counselor first. See if they can hook you up with someone they know or another contact that they have in their network. Because again, it's 6 degrees of separation. I talked about this before we even got on the panel, is that everybody knows somebody who does something, right? We do it for our cars, we do it for restaurants, we do it for all these other things. Do it for your college and your experience as a student as well. Like, use those degrees of separation to help you get a better idea of where you want to go. Yes, I do not ever want to undersell the importance of informational interviews. It's the entirety of my work, asking people about what they're here for and what their goals are and how I can provide resources to get them there. That's something that you're going to take throughout the entirety, no matter what industry you're in, because you're going to be collaborating with people and you need to understand their purpose here and then how you fit into that vision. And that's something that's translatable to literally everything you do. So yes, I just wanted to underscore that. That is a great point, and it's super awkward, but we empower you to go do this. And don't also get shut down when people don't reply, because people are busy. And also a lot of our colleagues and other folks are terrible about email. So it's not you, it's them. You can go shoot your shot with somebody else. And I assure you that someone will get back to you, because there's someone out there who's just waiting to talk about their job. I promise. Just like we're here today. So yeah.
And they say a little bit of flattery goes a long way. So, being able to say, hey, Mr. Wiggins, I really like the way you came all dressed, all pressed and stuff. I really like to get in that consulting business as well. Do you think maybe we could, link up after this? Just never be afraid to put yourself out there. If you're going to put an investment in a risky thing, risk it in yourself, because you are your biggest turnaround for any investment. Speaking of investing and thinking about in the past, I'll ask both of you, is there a figure from our beautiful history of being African-American in this country that you felt really resonated with you and really was a motivating piece as to why you're in your career? And if it wasn't from someone from our past here in America, then is there anybody in your life that fit that mold that helped you get to that point? So looking for a historical figure who maybe gave you some motivation, or someone personally.
I'll go. It actually stemmed from when I got to LA City. I had never really taken an African-American history or literature class. Although I was familiar with, some of our historical figures and have really made an impact on America and the world, there was no depth, right? And that's unfortunate coming from my high school at the time, but when I took the class with Mr. Ely, he had us read a book, and the author was Henry Louis Gates Jr. And I don't know if you guys know that name, but you may have seen his PBS special that comes on television, and it deals with the history of individuals, your genealogy. He's the guy who does the like they trace the actors and entertainers.
Like he told a few actors they was Black.
Yeah, stuff like that, right? But that motivates me so much, because I have an orientation that learns from the past to impact my decision making for the future. And he opened up my eyes to the elements that really were the fibers that helped us to kind of come over, get through, and be successful today. And so I maintain that connection with him in spirit, and I love the work he's doing now. So I would definitely say him.
Miss Aisha?
Yeah, so I'll add, similar to Lynell, I came from Black and Mexican high school in Chicago, but they still did not do any sort of historical knowledge. We didn't learn a ton about our people or our folks, which is super sad. So a lot of what I learned happened in college. I engaged, I took, history 100 or 150 or whatever it was, which was Black history, and learned about a lot of historical figures that are not talked about outside of, Malcolm and Martin and all these really important folks. One of the people that I learned about very late in the game, I mean, post graduate school even, is one of the first prominent Black librarians, and her name is Vivian G. Harsh. And she has a collection, actually, funny enough, in Chicago, named after her. It's an archive at the Carter G. Woodson Library on the south side of Chicago, which is also named after him, who's a prominent person who started Black History Month, actually. So again, we're sitting in all of this history. And there's all these names that I never heard. Ida B. Wells was someone that I looked up to a lot after I started taking class. The encouragement, the power of Zora Neale Hurston, all of these historians and Black historians who specifically focused on Black history and life as a part of not only American history, but the history of world and culture. And I think that's like the important thing here. We always say Black history is American history or US history. But it also is connected to so many other things. As you said, even with Henry Louis Gates and his show now, it shows the global impact of Blackness and Black people across the globe. And there's an interconnectedness there. That's not just everybody came from Africa anthropologically. It goes beyond that in terms of our culture, our impact, and the ways we even connect to people today. And so, yeah, so many names that I've learned about throughout the years that I want to know more about. I'm glad like media is kind of catching up. We're hearing more about those folks. I think there's like 16 Fred Hampton movies so that have come out. Like he was at my high school, would have never known that, because again, where is the history in education? And we're working on that. But this is that part of going to find your interest and really, and I'm thankful for the internet for y'all, because it's so much easier to go on and just say, I heard a name, let me go look it up. Right. Or someone mentioned this person, or I know that there's a Black History Month, who started that? Or, all these things where you literally only need a phrase or a term and you can go find whole histories of people and then contribute to them via Wikipedia, right? So there's all these ways that we can engage with our Black history. So yeah, I mean, please look up more about Vivian G. Harsh. She's amazing. So many other names who are part of, Du Bois and all these big names that show up, but there's so many other people who have contributed not only to their research on Black life, but also create a lot of the kind of more, I guess, common things that we experience today and that we're like products of, essentially. So yeah, I would also say in your field or major, whatever it is, find the Black folks. That's the one thing I wish I had done in library and information science. I should have known who the Black LIS professionals were before I was in graduate school, like just to know, just to be aware. I think that's very important. So, and again, if it comes down to it, that can be your research project or your thesis or whatever, if you're so passionate. But if not, just know offhand, just do a quick Google or something, just to be aware. I think that's important. It makes you feel a little bit more connected, to me, because you're gonna hear about a lot of white people. I will not lie to you.
Definitely. I remember as a child, my mom, she would make us do our history reports on people actively alive. Her rule was we could not do a report on anyone who was already passed and gone before us, because their contribution, not that it stopped, but it wasn't the future of our Blackness in America. So the fact that a lot of now the social media culture is trying to get us to change it to the Black Future Month is also like, kind of mind blowing, that we've recognized that we've built enough history with this country that now we're ready to make our Black future. And so with that being said, do you feel that you are well represented in your fields? I know that I want to go into music industry and I want to be an AR. There's only 1,800 of them in the world because you have to be registered. You also have to believe that there's only like maybe 18% women. And of that 18%, only 3 of them are Black. And one of them is at VP Motown. So I did like go into the research part of it, start looking up who was there, who could I reach out to, start following them on social media, just so I can get a grasp of like, what are the challenges we are going to face if I am the minority in a certain career field? So information and consulting, education, especially in education, private consulting, do you feel there is a shortage of Black people in that field?
Wow. I'd have to say that is the one area, the area of education, that I think African Americans and Blacks in general have found their way into critical positions to be able to make an impact. And
what about Black men? Because I know my sons, I have 2 sons, and they complained for the first 8 years of their school career that they had no Black male teachers.
And that was the transition point. It appears that many have transitioned away from the teaching role to more of the administrator. And you know, okay, since we're going here, one of the things that I found in the expression of that personal power, as a teacher, you begin to see the world in certain ways, and you understand because you have lived experience performing that role. And your relationships and the manner in which you address students is based on your conceptual model that you've developed and your observant engagement of those students and their ability to be successful or not. Because there's so many political dynamics that exist, where the administrators come into the classroom and seek to manage the classroom and the connection between the teacher and the student, I believe many Black males have shied away, because I have friends who are teachers and they receive pressure because their motivational tactics are called into question because they're not akin to the popular style. We gonna call you out for certain things if I think you're slacking, and I think you have, I know you have potential, but that may not be how the parent wants their child to be addressed and engaged. So this is just my personal perspective of what I've seen and what I've heard by some of these male teachers. They're fatigued, not from dealing with the classroom and the students, but from dealing with the parent and the administration that wants to immediately take the parent's perspective and not address the student not reaching the milestones they need to hit to be successful and move on to the next level. And this is all throughout. I have a friend who is in the Oakland suburb area. I have friends who are here in LA. I work with teachers in Compton and the surrounding areas of Linwood. And it's sad. So I've noticed that when in working with students, there's this sense that many want to be entrepreneurs. And at the essence of that, they want to be in control of their own destiny and not have this sense of a boss telling them what to do, right? I don't know the historical, dynamics of that with us, coming out of slavery. But the one thing I do know is that having a sense of personal power around being able to cultivate your own space and invest in people, we really value that as a people, right? It's like, I'd say maybe a communal ethic. And when that's attacked, it makes you call into question whether or not it's something you feel you really want to do. So you see people start charter schools and other, dynamics where they can have more of that hands-on and really speak the way they want to help people promote and move on. And I think that's some of what's contributed to it.
To the lower numbers of
males, and particularly African-American males, in teacher roles in education.
And Miss Aisha, it's so easy for us to say, oh, we're Black and we're women, but what about age? How many Black people around your age group, your peer group, are in positions that you're in right now?
Yeah, so not many. So I interestingly enough, Lynell touches on something that I think I see in my particular field almost like a weird, not an inverse exactly, but something strange is happening. And that, so we are 85% white in terms of librarians, 82% female, and then of higher ed. So that's all the colleges, university, and community colleges in the US as of 2010. We had about 26,000, 1,400 of those are Black, right? So super, super small numbers. We're less than 10%. We're getting into the small numbers. So one thing we talk about a lot is what they used to call the pipeline, and they're changing those names, right? So you see people, like you said, hitting milestones and kind of going and being fed through a system to either success or to their detriment, depending on what systems you're talking about. And with librarianship, and again, that also includes, I'll include museums and archives as well. They're kind of tenets of the same animal, which is like the information science field. We see a lot of women overrepresented just in general. We are what we would, I think we consider pink collar work. So administrative, clerical jobs that women do. And librarianship is one of those. It is very archaic in terms of how people see our work. And I think that is a huge, we are really bad at marketing. Librarianship is not sexy, depending on who you ask. And so a lot of people come into librarian and say, why in the world would I want to do that? What, y'all made 40K, ugh. Like, I get it, right? Like, we are not the sexy field. So some of it is poor marketing. For the folks who do reach that level, I think we had 2 Black men in my college when I was there for graduate school. And the other part is that we have kind of corporate entities that work with us a lot. So similar to education, where you can consult and do all these other things. We have vendors essentially, where alongside library systems, we pay corporations to basically run our systems and use our data. So all the books you get, all those systems are run by companies. And those companies offer more money, have better benefits. I don't think they have better hours, although when you're faculty, your hours are insane anyway, so maybe they do. And so all of the Black men that I know went and worked for those companies. So they became library, basically consultants inside of these corporations. And that's not to say that's a bad thing, but we talk about people moving through, again, the pipeline of, I'm going to go through school and become a museum archivist or a librarian or, a library assistant. A lot of those people get snapped up because of these other things that are benefits to what they're trying to do, either monetarily, because we don't make as much as they do, or we can't, or the CCs don't offer as much as those corporations do, or other benefits, location, all these other things that you have to do to become a librarian in a system. There's a lot of barriers unnecessarily that I think detract from the work of librarianship, if you know what that is, which again, we're poor marketers, so maybe you don't. But so a lot of it, I think it's all of those things. We have historical gendered roles that stop people from getting excited about it. We have a stagnant pay equity system. We have racism and white supremacy throughout because we are overbearingly white in our field. And, we've all been in a meeting or two where white women tears threatened our safety and our ability to be successful. And that is a constant in my field. I'll say even right now at Glendale, I am the only Black librarian. There's one other person of color. Everyone else is white. And that is a constant thing pretty much at every community college, even the ones that are Hispanic serving. So we have so many things going on in librarianship, and this sounds super depressing, and I'm so sorry. There's a reason that I'm here, which is that I love what I do, and it's not all that I am, but I find that librarianship also brings together all the things that I think are cool about information, which is that you get it first, you get to disseminate it in a way that's meaningful to the people that you care about, and that can impact how they move through our society. So a lot of librarians do citizenship work. We do work with parents. We do work with, as you see, students. Like, there's so many ways you can use this information science degree, and we just are not, I don't think, doing enough to market that amongst Black men, just Black women, and other folks. And then we are also, as you see, I shared the Career Outlook website. The census keeps a lot of data. It used to be called the Occupational Handbook. That's like the OG way, that tells you about industry trends, right? So the other thing about information science is that we trend stagnant-ish. Like it'll be up sometimes and it'll kind of be the same. We make a joke, especially in archives. I have a lot of Black archivist friends, and they'll say, I can't wait till so-and-so dies so I can have a job. It's like, it takes a lot sometimes to get a spot in some of these places because it is not an industry that's growing rapidly as we see in these other ways. So it's so many things impact our industry, but I think overall, it's in terms of being a Black person here, there is the space for it. But again, like me and my other peers and my colleagues, we're trying to make that more evident to people who may be interested by doing panels like this, by going into classrooms, by talking to people and letting them know that we just don't stamp books. We don't just hand out bookmarks. I don't know what people think we do, but they're always shocked when I say how much I teach, how much I engage, how much I do in terms of social activism and justice and all these things, because all of that is information. Everything you do depends on the information you have. And that is why it's so important to have people like us in these gatekeeping systems to make that information more accessible to everyone. So I hope I did my marketing push at the end after saying what an abysmal industry this is. It's not.
You know, it's coming for the marketing question. Like, what impact have you made then personally to make this better? No, I wholeheartedly agree, because a lot of times, like you said, the information that is being put into these systems also needs to be quality control checked, because if we let them just give us anything to put into the system, now the narrative of who we are is going to be changed, especially with like critical race theory coming into play right now. It's like, what are we going to say? Did the Africans willingly go on a cruise to America so they could help build a new country, or were they forcibly taken from their homes and, you know, made to live lives that were like very demeaning? So thank you for at least being in those spaces, and to both of you, because we need to be represented, we need to be heard, and our stories need to be true to us and not just the past or the history, but also our future and where we plan on going with our career fields. Forgive me, I do live by the airport, so there's a few planes going over my head, but we have time for one more last question before we get into the opening remarks from our audience. So I will give you guys a few seconds to think about this last question, which is, do you have any specific advice for African-American students who wish to enter your field? Anything that you like, one little key pointer you want to throw out to everybody? I'll start with you, Mr. Wiggins.
Well, to specifically define my field, I call it college student affairs. Some people call it student services. I am a counselor by trade, academic counselor. And, you know, since you guys are enrolled at City, some of your first opportunities come from the student, either leadership positions or even paid positions. But it is the culture is very network oriented. And if you could imagine, as professionals transition to different schools, they end up needing to hire new talent. So connecting at the level of organizations like Amend, I'll put the email address, the website in the chat, but Amend is the African American Male Enhancement Network Development Group, and they are doctorate level body of administrators throughout California, African American males, and they put on a conference and various initiatives throughout the different community colleges to support Black males in education. You can get involved as a student member unto other internship and opportunities that they offer. There's also a male workshop. Oh, I can't recall the name of it, but I have access to the link, so I'll put it in the chat. For those who would like to be supported, there's about 10 community colleges that are putting on this conference locally in the LA region. It's at LA Harbor College. But just connecting with inlets and graduate programs, because you have to have if you want to work in a department in a community college or university, beyond a coordinator, you tend to have a master's degree. And it could be in higher education, it could be in leadership. Sometimes if you want to teach, because as a counselor, I also teach, have taught certain types of counseling classes. And to get into the community college as an instructor, you have to have a master's degree typically for most disciplines, but there are other requirements for the CTE programs. You have to have a degree specifically in the discipline you'd like to teach, right? So there are various paths to get in. Undergrad major, you don't have to have any particular undergrad, but the master's degree is important.
So don't stop at bachelor's, get the master's and become a master.
Unless your industry that you want to get into dictates that you don't need the master's degree to make the type of money you would like to make.
Okay, there it is.
Or to have the type of impact that you would like to have.
Okay.
So your industry dictates what that degree is.
And you'll find that out by networking with those who are in the industry right now and learning what the path is, or talking to your counselors to see what is the complete, journey there.
That is correct.
Yes.
And I see what Mr. Turcott put in, that your master's degree typically may take less time than your AA or your bachelor's degree.
I hope so. I know a few people with a few masters.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that. So library and thank you, Lynell, because the counseling tip is like always what I want to hear about, because y'all have all the insider knowledge. Just to like steer folks there. I know I'll add that there's the Black student senators of the California community colleges, then the Black Students United, which UMOJA is a part of that as well. So when you talk about leadership opportunities, both locally and nationally, and you'd be surprised how many people don't volunteer for these things. Shocker. People don't want to spend more time talking about school outside of school, but these are the places where, again, the networking begins. People recognize your name. People start to get excited about the work that you do, or even just how you engage. So maybe you're not the person who stands up at every meeting and says something really important, but you can be the person who always shows up and has really great questions. And I think that's, again, a part of knowing yourself and knowing what your role can be. It's not about everyone being an introvert or an extrovert or having these special skills. It's about being engaged and people feeling like you care. And there's a lot of people who have gone through this world and been successful because they cared a little bit more than everybody else. So I think those, again, in terms of knowing your traits. I'll speak specifically to library and information science. So to be a credentialed librarian, that is a master's degree. And I will say, and I don't know if there are any more LIS people in the room, hopefully not, but our master's, I'll say personally, I feel is probably one of the more simple master's degrees to complete. I
love how your eyes got big right now.
Like a relative term, but okay, so let me put this in context. So master's programs, graduate programs have a lot of requirements, just like your bachelor's degree. A lot of times you'll complete a thesis. You might have to submit a product or a work to graduate. A lot of times you'll have to take things like statistics. You'll have to take a research methods course. You'll have to actually conduct research with a faculty member. A lot of graduate studies require these things as a part of graduation. Most library and information science degrees do not. And so this is why I say, like, relatively a little more simple than a lot of places. So you can do a thesis, but it's not required at most LIS schools. You can do research, but it's not required. You definitely don't have to take methods, which I think they should have made us, but they did not. And you do not take things like stats, which is like one of the harder degrees that you take for graduate school. So like there's all these other pieces of graduate programs that LIS, I guess just because of our focus, we are very insular. We look inward a lot and we are not very interdisciplinary, which we're getting there. But our graduate program it offers a lot of that. A lot of them are online because of the nature of librarianship, which is that people are actively working in the field as they get their degree. So people are library assistants, they're clerks, they're active librarians, maybe not in title, but in responsibility. And so a lot of them come back to school as they're getting the job to then be promoted to librarian as a role and as like an actual, and then of course there's pay there, right? Pay equity is a thing. So when you're a librarian, you have to make a certain amount of money. When you're a library assistant, they can make you do librarian work and not pay you for it. So this is also where the graduate degree comes in handy, because now you can say, I have a master's, you owe me $54,000, okay? So this is where it comes in at. So in terms of LIS2, 2 years-ish or so, give or take, again, if you're online or all these other things. For Black students in particular, we have a program called Spectrum that will pay for your school. And this is competitive in the nature of it's all students of color. So it gets kind of competitive in that way. But for the most part, most of us either don't know about it when we start our degrees, or we don't apply because we think we're not going to get it. And so a lot of students don't apply. So it becomes that thing of when you don't ask the question, you don't get an answer, right? And I know I didn't know about it until I literally was about to graduate, and it was like, what? So yeah, Spectrum scholarship is like a big part of LIS. They also are a networking scholarship. So they will pay for you to go to conferences. They link you up with other librarians and other students of color. A lot of people I know who kind of seem to have a jump start in the field. I'm like, how do you know everybody? All this, they're like, oh, I was a Spectrum scholar. And I'm like, oh, of course, right? Like, and then I'm like pounding the pavement or whatever. So save yourself the effort, and you can be in these scholarship programs. And I'll add, this is a general thing for pretty much all schooling, but I think specifically for folks who are looking to transition to graduate school or other programs, apply to the scholarship. Even if you feel like, I mean, if you have baseline requirements, just apply. I don't know how many times I've like not applied to stuff because I was like, I don't think I have a strong enough dossier or whatever. And let them tell you no, honestly. And I know that sounds so like empowering, but then you look at your stuff and you're like, I'm not impressive. You never know what the pool is like, especially as someone who's a Black person, and we already know what these fields look like. They need us. We make them look good to the people who matter. So always apply, let them tell you that you don't have what it takes or that you're missing some materials or whatever. Apply. I don't know how many times, because again, with our Spectrum scholarships, I know for a fact people don't apply. And so by proxy, they just kind of scoop everybody up. Everybody who applied that year gets it, basically, because the numbers are so different. So yeah, I don't know. That was a lot of information, but I have a lot of.
I would expect it. You're in information, so I would.
Yeah, it's a lot of disparate information, but I mean, this is kind of the nature of, and I think this is why it's so hard, right, to find a place or your path, is because you can go so many different ways. But we encourage you to seek those things out based on your interests and what you find your passion about. And keep in mind that you can always go to school, whether it's backwards or forwards or sideways. It's always there for you. If you don't love school, that's also okay. Some people just complete it to get where they need to go, and that's fine. You don't have to love it. You don't have to be amazing at it. You just need to, honestly, that degree looks the same whether your grades were stellar or not. I'll be perfectly honest. That piece of paper in my office, they don't, I mean, I know business does some wacky stuff when you're trying to apply to graduate school. They might care about your GPA. A lot of other people don't. The only difference for LIS is that if you have I think a less than a 3.0, they make you take some tests or something. But other than that, just pass and do your best. And it's going to be what it's going to be. Because again, grades are subjective. And you always need to remember that. You can do amazing in class and not get the grade that you think you deserve. And you're probably correct. But there's a lot more that we can do once we have the credentials. And that's what we're looking forward to. Like, what do we want to do? So, okay, I'm done. I'm getting off my soapbox now.
No, thank you. I will say that that's why I went back to school. I worked for 20 years in the workforce, because right out of high school, attending a business academy, they wanted me to go work social work. And like you said, I looked at how much they made. I was like, $26,000 a year. I could go slang better things rather than being a social worker. So then I went into real estate. Then I went into, being a college admissions advisor for like 5 years. So after telling people to discover the power in them and go to college and get your degree, they'd always ask, and so what school did you go to? And I'd have to look at them with a blank stare like, none. So after 20 years of working and facilitating other people's dreams and building other people's businesses and brands, I took that same risk and investment in myself. And so I am here a year and a half later, about to finish a 20-year, goal. And like you said, it's never too late to go back and reevaluate yourself. Never too late to go back and say, I can learn more, and it's never too late to succeed. So I would like to close by saying, first of all, thank you very much to our panelists for taking the time to answer our questions and be here for our students and our audience. My co-facilitator has dipped off on me, so I will pass it back to one of my Umoja counselors, either Dr. Simmons or Mr. David, if you would like to look in the chat, see if there's any questions that we wanted to ask.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so both Dr. Duth and Andrea had to run out, so I'll kind of put myself in here. I don't know how I ended up putting myself like that, but I think we do have one question from Mr. Moises. If you're still here, let me double check. You may have stepped away. Okay.
And I see that a lot of people have put really good, useful links in the chat. So if you want to just like click on them, anybody out there want to get some more information on both of our panelists, the links that they linked us up with, that's our big thing where I work. It's like, yeah, link up. We got to get the links, So hit them links, hit them likes, subscribe, hit the notification button.
Speaking of links, thank you for mentioning that, Jessica. And also thank you to the panelists. Oh my God, this has been incredible in terms of just your insights and some of the conversations that have been going on. And regarding feedback, we really want to encourage our students and anyone else that are here today to complete our feedback form. This helps us, identify what we're doing, how we're doing, so that we can continue to do these types of events to the Career Center for Umoja and throughout LA City College. So if you could just take a minute to fill out those forms, and I will turn it back over to Dr. Simmons. Thank you.
Cool. So Moises is getting his camera set. I'm just going to add on to that. I'm going to chime in with that and say, for all the students in here, especially the Black students, like, you guys' voices are powerful. If you want to see more Black representation with our events, our activities, even our hiring, y'all need to speak up, and those surveys are the best way to do that. So I think Moises, did I hear you? Is your mic working now?
Yeah, is it working? Can you all hear me?
Yeah. Floor is yours.
Hello. I appreciate all that y'all had to say, especially Aisha. What you had to say and the way you looked at the situation, which was entering or living in this like kind of an American society where we have to do things like market ourselves and kind of taking the best at that situation, and taking advantage of all those things. And I agree with that. So I guess my question is, what are other things that you did to take advantage of those situations around you that maybe other people feel it's kind of problematic, or because of that kind of maybe this idea of marketing yourself, and maybe that's not what you're there to do, but at the same time that is what you're there to do, so just other things that you also did that other people feel like, oh, a little controversial, even though I don't think it's controversial.
Yeah, thank you, Mozzies. Yeah, I think what you're referring to is when I was like talking about asking for forgiveness then permission. I do a lot of like discovering who's in charge of the thing and then asking them, requesting kindly to give me access, or asking, how do I get X, right, from you? Because you're usually, at least in colleges, it's all about the bureaucracy and paperwork. Like, people are in charge of things and they have to have a trail to show where things go. Any sort of resources, there's a trail that you can kind of see.
I guess you're right, but what I'm saying is things that are outside of school, like maybe because, like, for example, I'm 22, right?
Mhm.
And some things have to do with information. And
Mhm.
some things, as you're going to school, you're focused on getting good grades, for example. But because of that, you're not doing all these other things like asking questions, joining these
Mhm.
groups, so that's one question I'm having. Like, what are things outside of school, outside of academic life, that were going on during those same times in your life, in those same years in your life, that you
Mhm.
kind of were like, oh, I wish I did that, for example, or whatever.
Oh yeah. Okay. Good question. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah. So Whew. Okay, yes, because school can be long. So I did 4 years of undergrad and then took a year off to just work because again, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet and was like investigating and talking to people, doing volunteering, those things that I mentioned to kind of get a sense of what I wanted to go do. And then I went into graduate school. So I kind of had like a gap year of sorts. And yeah, so during that time, I feel like one of the things that is big now, but I guess this was like 2013 or something. So there really wasn't a ton of culture around it, was just like developing a real self-care practice. So outside of school, because again, grew up a nerd, was very like invested in grades and like doing well. And so when I went into undergrad and did really poorly, I like fell apart. Like I had no like real personhood outside of like what I can contribute in class, essentially. And so, or that was what I was known for, was being like the smart girl. Right. So for me, it was this development of like my other interests. Like, what are you going to do when you get off work? Which I think is something our like colleagues even struggle with. Like, when you leave this place, what are you going to do with yourself? And so a lot of that is just, again, like creating communities. I like have done like the meetups where you kind of go and meet up with people and do like random stuff like book groups or like hiking or, you know, things that are low cost, low effort, but you can link up with people and kind of just like have fun. If you're into D&D, like doing virtual online gaming, you know, going, you know, on the apps, if you do like the outside app thing, linking up with people and doing like Pokemon Go, whatever you're into, getting on your Switch, being a part of that community, just finding a place where you cannot be dictated to because of how smart you are or what kind of grades you have, to where it really is about who you are as a person. And maybe that's even like church or like I said, volunteering, just something else that you put a lot of time into that is not school. And so for me, like I play a ton of tennis and people are like, you are really into tennis. Are you very good? No, but I go because it's fun. I meet people. And for me, it's something that I can be interested in outside of my profession, right? And that's really important, is to have interest outside of it. Of course, hobbies, and people say that stuff all the time, but they don't really tell you how to do it or like how difficult it is to be consistent with it when you really want to go home and lay on the couch. So really make that push to keep your interests separate from schooling and all this other stuff. You need to have a personal sense of self outside of what you can achieve as a student. That's very, very important. I think other things that I thought of, just in terms of like advice, another part of that is unless they prove otherwise, I consider my work friends. And that sounds shady, but it's not. There are amazing people that we meet and they are going to be, you know, friends for life. And there are some people where you're going to see them at work and that is the only time y'all will speak. And that also needs to be okay. I'm a person who feels guilty when I don't get along with people. I'm a confrontational Aries, but someone who hates having to confront people. And so for me, a big part of that advice in my external life is separating those spheres, making sure I compartmentalize and say, when I'm at work, this is how I engage. These are the people that I'm with. This is what I'm doing. And then sometimes when I leave work, I'm no longer in that sphere. I don't owe those people anything. I don't have to show up for them in certain ways if I don't feel that trust and love and patience that I do with my friendships. And that's okay. They are work people and that is where they stay, right? And I think, at least for me as a librarian, and as a faculty member in education, so much of your professional life bleeds into your personal life. And it is really hard to separate that work-life balance. You have to try very, very hard to keep them separate and to make sure you make time to be a person outside of your job. And that might mean leaving some people at work, especially their attitudes, their feedback, all those things that you don't want to take home with you. And again, it's hard as faculty because so much of what we do is because of a passion. Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone else have anything on this? I feel like I kind of just I have very strong feelings.
You killed it. Don't even worry about it. You killed it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, but what I would say very quickly, don't neglect making relationships with people while you're in college. You will be very surprised that these individuals will end up being quite successful one day. And you will see them in places that you least expected. And when I got to USC, the friends that I hung around a lot of, if they weren't in engineering, I didn't really think, well, what's their major? I would just see them and we connect in different ways, right? But the reality is, I should have been asking, well, what are you into? I got people that I know that have made movies, actors, music producers, and I had opportunities to do things that I didn't. Here's the key. If you have an opportunity to do something that looks like it could be beneficial in the future, like it's new, it's fine, try it out. Just give it a little time, try to understand it, if it's on the cutting edge, because in time, over time, it may become something. And I'll give you a very quick, I'm gonna put this guy in the chat. I want you to check out this website. One of my roommates, he was a music producer. He would have guys come to the house at the time, and I'm like, oh, what's up, man? In his bedroom, had a little production area in the corner. And he asked me one day, you think you want to help me out? I was like, nah, I'm not really into it. I'm gonna do this over here. He's gone on to do some great things. Now you might have some experiences in your life where you look back and you wish, man, I should have tried that out. Right? But that just lets you know, you never know who might become something one day. So don't shrug off opportunities.
Well said, well said. So I think we have time for one more question. Dejanay, I don't know if I know you had your hand up and you typed out a question about mentoring. Did you want to elaborate, or you want me to just ask? Well, I can answer that question too, but.
Yeah, that was
Go for it.
I just wanted to know, I'm a student at LACC and I should be transferring to a university this year or hopefully next year. So I was last minute, like Aisha said. So I don't have any mentoring, recommendation letters, anything like that. But I applied to 8 colleges. My GPA is, I think, around a 2.9, 3.0. So I just need help navigating this. I'm re-entering the school schooling as well. So I'm 32. So I'm kind of old out here. So I just need like some guidance.
Yeah, of course. And so to answer your question directly, like, yeah, mentoring is available through our program, but it's not exclusively through our program. Always remember that. And if I could chime in and give my one of my regrets when I was in school is that I didn't foster those relationships with my faculty members. It would have been so much easier getting those letters of recs and everything like that. But yeah, Umoja, we're here to provide mentorship, and we're here to provide you the links to potential mentors, right? All of the connections that we have, the folk that we bring onto these webinars, I don't want to talk for them, but my assumption is that if they were in a field that you were interested in, they would love to kind of help you out and give some advice. But definitely, I'll make sure I send my email address to you directly. Send me a message or email. We'll set up an appointment and discuss. But mentoring is not something you need to only get from your counselors. Reach out to your other faculty members. Like was said in here, people in general want to help folks. Well, I don't want to make a huge assumption like that, but a lot of people in this work want to help students, especially those who may have come from similar backgrounds. So give it a shot, shoot your shot, send a message. Hey, I would love to get some advice from you, some mentoring, all that. I think most of the time you're going to get some positive remarks. So I'll send that message out to you. But I want to thank everyone for being here. Lionel, Aisha, Jessica being a bond moderator, second day in a row. This has been some really good stuff, y'all. And yeah, I want to appreciate all the students that have taken the time to come in here, ask some great questions. This has been awesome stuff. So just know that these webinars are recorded. They will be on the Career Center YouTube page, on the Umoja Canvas Shell, all of that. So if you have questions, you want some mentoring, maybe you want to link up with with any of our presenters, let us know, and we'll definitely put you in contact. But as other people said, yeah, we're going to go ahead and start closing this down. If our presenters would like to close off with anything, now's your chance.
I mean, I'll just thank everyone because I'm not an LA City College person. So thank you for the invitation, but also thank you to the students who came and just wanted to learn a little bit more. You already kind of started your journeys and you've even shared with us a little bit of what you need, which again is so important in terms of our feedback loop. Tell folks what you need to succeed and we will get you those tools and resources to make it happen. And this is the first step in that, is showing up for yourself. So keep doing that and you'll be doing fine. I promise you the grades will come. The rest of it is that everyday work of engaging and creating community that's going to really make you successful.
Excellent. I totally agree. And I just want to say thank you for inviting me, and seek to maybe engage in a work experience education opportunity. While you're in school, if you know of a career path you want to get into, try to get an internship or engage in service learning that can give you some firsthand experience of that field. Nice meeting you all.
And I'll close out by saying thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be representing the Umoja community and the students here at LACC. And yeah, Black History Month.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone coming on. I'm going to drop my email address real quick for any of the students who want to set up an appointment. Other than that, we're all set. So if anyone wants to hang out for a few minutes, please don't forget to do that survey that David has posted several times. It's important. It's really important for our data. And so we could also do more of these events in the future. So appreciate everyone coming. Go ahead and shut down the recording.